Okay. Apparently, I am now live. I had the thought that I would do a live stream about the question I was thinking about while sitting out on the deck in the not quite sunny afternoon, which was um, just sort of how do you think about, or what questions do you ask when you're working on a mix? Like, what's a different way to think about it than I need to EQ this, I need to compress this, I need to whatever, but to think more about how you approach making a choice so you know what tool to move towards to do something. And I know there's nobody on this stream yet, but I could always repeat this, or maybe I can cut off the beginning of these streams. And I don't know, maybe I'll just wait because I can edit this after the fact. Probably. I guess I should continue talking in case I can't edit this after the fact. Um, Apparently, I got one like, so it doesn't show me any concurrent viewers. But if there's anyone there, yes, I was thinking about this idea about what to think about when mixing. And so I thought, great, I'll write that down as a topic for ditcommunity.com and do that on a weekly session because I've been doing those on Mondays. And I came in here right after that because my next thought was, wait, I have YouTube. I can just live stream. Why don't I just do a live stream about it right now and, and sort of promote DIT community rather than promote DIT community by being on DIT community. Anyways, so that was the thought. I came in here. This was maybe 35 minutes ago. I fired up OBS. I fired up my camera. If you don't know what OBS is, it's open broadcast software. It's what people use to YouTube stream, typically, especially on Windows, maybe on Mac as well. And of course, it took me like 40 minutes to get the stupid connectivity between the streaming software and YouTube to the point where it wasn't telling me the bitrate was too low, or the camera was really, really bright because I'd been set up for recording. So anyways, it just took me a while to get this set up, and then I started losing all interest in actually doing the stream. But finally, I got it up and going, and hopefully have something interesting to say. But the weird thing was today was just this idea of the sudden idea that we're gonna move back to Victoria, and my nutty brain doesn't go, okay, some point in time we're moving back to Victoria within the next couple of years. My nutty brain goes, what, we're moving back to Victoria? Let's go. I'm going to lose this studio. Let's go. Let's get down the studio. Let's get set up. So that's been sort of infiltrating my brain. So I was trying to have a relaxing afternoon sitting on the deck, but I got a little bit manic and thought about this question. So my question, and welcome to whoever the two concurrent users are. I don't use YouTube Studio that often, so I don't know if I can see your names unless you chat or whatever. I see the chat here. I've got that all going, but yeah, my thought was, well, that's kind of an interesting thing to talk about when you talk about gear and mixing and music and instruments and how to record and everything else. Hey, the barn cat is here. Um, and yeah, I was, because what I was thinking about is what's a way to think about mixing if you're learning that is different than the way I learned. Because when I learned mixing, I was in music school. It was the 80s. It was the height of things moving from analog rapidly towards digital, but nowhere near into digital yet. Digital was around us early days. That's why I have a love and a fascination for vintage 80s synthesizers. I've got an SPX 90 here as an effects unit, just one, not a ton of 80s other stuff, other than my 80s. Oh, hang on one second, I'll show you. I gotta switch to the camera so I can see if I'm So I showed this on my channel before, but I still haven't done a video on it. But this is the Roland G77 jazz bass, but it's also, it's so 80s looking, but it's also a synth bass with a 24 pin, can't quite see it in the camera there, but 24 pin ribbon cable connection for the synth. And the synth is a JX8P in a box, basically, that was designed to go with this thing. And yeah, that's just a side note. So, so I was thinking about how would I go about thinking about learning mixing differently if than the way I learned it in the 80s, which was with analog gear that was moving towards digital. MIDI was around. We didn't have DAWs, of course. It was reel-to-reel tape. You were learning on systems where there's particular behaviors you have to learn about, such as if you drive a preamp, and this is still pretty well true, but if you drive a preamp too hard, it'll break up to the point of not functioning. And if you don't compress things, you can't keep things sometimes in the right range on the tape to keep the tape noise down low enough so that when you add all the tracks together, that tape noise doesn't add up to too much background noise, et cetera, et cetera. So you're always recording hot. Nowadays, you don't have to record hot because you have digital gain, which, there's still noise coming up, but you can get super clear signals without going very hot these days. And of course, over time, I developed an ear and learned how to use a DAW when I got back into mixing in the early 2000s. And I always think in terms of what tool would I go to? What tool would I go to? And the other part of it, which is sort of the more instinctual part of what am I doing to the music, um, is just in the background. So if you take away the idea that, oh, do I need an 1176 compressor? Do I need, do I need a Neve emulation for my preamps? Do I need to use SSL EQs? None of those things really matter. What really matters is what can you hear and what does the music need? And we often forget that because we're just jumping into trying to, especially when you're learning, you're jumping into trying to use the tools that you think you're supposed to use because you kind of know they're important for certain functions, but you might not know exactly why. Learning nowadays, you could just get a DAW and be 8 and teaching yourself to learn this stuff and not have a clue why anything works, but just figure out what sounds good. So it's a different way of sort of getting into the industry, or there's so many different ways of getting into the industry. And so the types of things I was thinking of is when you're listening to music, what are the typical things that stand out when mixing? And what stands out is something sounds just wrong in the song. Something sounds like you don't know what's right. That could be a song issue. It might not have anything to do with mixing. Something could be brittle. It could be, we use these terms, brittle. What does that mean in audio? It could be something bright and annoying and you're not sure what it is. And if you're not sure what it is, then what is it you're trying to, what tool do you go to? So you're probably thinking, well, it's brittle, I got to go to an EQ. And that's sort of jumping to things too fast, because the first thing you should be thinking about is more, well, what's going on? What instruments are happening there? What's the timing of the instruments? What frequency ranges do those instruments operate in? And I don't mean you have to analyze the frequency ranges. You just have to listen and go, oh, that voice is very high pitched. Oh, and that guitar is also high pitched. And it's kind of hard to hear what he's saying. What do I do to fix that? Well, it might be because you need more punch. It might be because the frequencies are masking each other, so there's not clarity there. It might be because the arrangement is such that the guitar is playing every single beat that the words are being sung, and it's not a great arrangement to have the words be clear. But it might be a cool effect. So then you have to think about, do I stick with the cool effect, or do I want the words to be clear? So that it might come from something else. But so that's the type of questions I was thinking of, like, what am I hearing that doesn't sound right? Or another good one would be, why is the chorus boring, right? Or what sounds wrong when it gets to the chorus? I think I've done a good job of mixing. I think I'm at a certain point, but what's missing there? And sometimes it's lacking energy, and you think, oh, well, then it needs another guitar part. Well, that might not be the answer. If you know it's lacking energy, now you can start listening for, well, is that because it musically is lacking energy, or because the sonic character of the instruments involved don't have the drive you want? So if you've got acoustic guitar and gamelan bells in the chorus, and you're really wanting it to punch, maybe that acoustic guitar should be distorted and made to sound like an electric guitar, or closer to an electric guitar, or whatever, depend on what the song was, whether you might want to drive an acoustic towards an electric, or do you need to replace it? Or is it, again, just a frequency issue? But thinking of questions like that, another good question is, does something need, well, I was kind of thinking of the ranges or the maybe pillars of things you'd think about when you're analyzing a piece of music. Like, is it punchy enough, or is it soft enough, like the opposite of punchy? Like, are the percussive elements a little bit muted and not too heavy? You depending on the song, you might want one or the other. Um, are the frequencies balanced across everything? Is there enough bass versus mid-range frequencies in how everything sounds? And then if the answer is no, you ask the question, is there a balance, is the question, not what frequency should I EQ? Because if you ask, is there a balance in the frequencies, and you feel like there isn't a balance in the frequencies, then it doesn't necessarily mean jumping to an EQ. It could be a dynamics thing. It could be, you need more parts or less parts in that part of the song. So, okay, what's going on in the chats? I'm sort of rambling here. That was my plan. Doing live streams is really weird. When I do them on DIT, I usually have a very specified topic list. I try and make it more like a class. Like, okay, here's what I'm going to talk about. And I ask people to ask questions. And they often, just say yep or whatever, but don't ask anything. And it's so different than presenting in a classroom or to people, if I'm tutoring people or whatever. It's a lot easier to get a sense that anything you're saying is coming across and being worth talking about. But anyways, comments. I used a compressor for years without knowing what it did. Exactly. And I was thinking about the other one is, not just do you use something and not exactly know what it does, but and there's nothing wrong with doing that, because obviously you know what it does now, and for years you didn't, but you got to know kind of how to use one and heard it do something to the sound, even if you didn't know how to maybe drive that change in the direction you wanted it to go. You just knew, oh, louder, crank a compressor and you get louder, or squash everything and make it sound weird. But not know, yeah, oh, I'd put it on the drums and I wanted it to be, the kick to be punchier, but it sounds kind of flippier or woofier or whatever, and you don't realize you've cut off all the attack, or stuff like that. But yeah, sort of asking more of the questions about the general. It's sort of like taking everything away from what tool am I going to use, and then ask the question about what's happening in the music. Because when you think about it, before you knew how to use anything in mixing, when you heard a song, sometimes you went, oh, that's kind of screechy. Sometimes you went, oh, that's such a smooth feeling song. Like, there's certain genres like jazzy blues, the way it might be recorded is going to sound a certain way in a mix compared to a driving rock song that's been heavily compressed. And you've heard the stuff before, because we've had recorded music for over a century now. And yeah, and you haven't necessarily figured out what tools to use. So as you're learning to use tools, everybody's going to do that. I wasn't coming to talk about any particular tools today. It could be really handy to just pick one, like pick a compressor, pick an EQ, just pick one or few tools and stick with those tools. And then absolutely don't worry about whether or not you've got the SSL thing you need, or you've got the, whatever brand, because there's all these brands out there that have made amazing gear. And then there's brands that are lesser known that are also making amazing gear, right? There's just amazing gear out there, and you can create with it. So pick VST plugins or analog hardware, whatever you're going with. Get a few choice things, and then just learn them. But then shift your thinking from, um, gee, how can I learn more and more of these tools uh, to sort of change my palette of my paintbrush for the stuff I'm mixing, and think more along the lines of how can I just get really good at using the tools I've got? Because if you have 20 tools, and 20 is maybe pushing it. When I say go simple, if you went simple, I would say, make sure you have a favorite compressor, favorite EQ, some sort of reverb, some sort of multi effects, and some sort of delay. And then there might be a bunch of individual things that are very unique types of things. But with all those things, you can manipulate sound so drastically, throwing delay on something and throwing it through a saturator, and then, you know, um, controlling that through a compressor is so much different than compressing the hell out of something that has been saturated and then throwing it through a delay that doesn't have the saturation being added. So just all these little changes that are subtle, that you start to hear, like you can, I could right now imagine what a saturator going into a compressor, how that would sound slightly different than a compressor going into a saturator, even though I haven't fully analyzed, um, you know, why that is. I've used both those tools enough in either of those orders to sort of get a sense of what might happen, but I can't tell you that I would actually like that effect on a particular part. It's more, oh, I could do this sort of thing. I know that sounds a bit more this way, a little bit. I feel like if you saturate first and then you compress, you lose brightness, and if you do it the other way, you add all this brightness and energy back onto things, because the compressor, of course, squashes down the dynamics of the saturation or distortion, and potentially takes away that energy, because part of why it sounds saturated or distorted is that it crackles between quiet and loud. That's like overdriving something, makes it distort. So anyways, anybody got any questions? I thought maybe I'd show some examples. I'm not sure how long I'm live streaming. My main thing today was, like I said, I put out a video this morning about this stupid idea that we're going to move back to Victoria, and I'm going to get rid of the studio and probably super downsize. But that's only one idea. I might only partially downsize. But the the, the extreme in me, the extremist in me goes, man, I could go down to a single keyboard and one drum machine, and maybe I'll probably have the same mixer, but less inputs and a few less outboard gear and a smaller space, and no ability to track people unless they're in the same room as me. So that's what we're considering doing. And after coming back from driving to Victoria and looking around at the city again and thinking what areas might I want to live in, and what's the real estate looking like in those sort of regions. And this is coming from a conversation that was Friday night. Friday night, we started talking about moving back to Victoria. I took it to well, let's get serious. Let's discuss this. When are you thinking, and how long are we going to be here? And we discussed a 2-year sort of time frame for moving back to Victoria. And the thing I wrestle with right now was just this idea that, oh, if I wait 2 years, I'll get 2 more years out of the space, but I'll be older and my health will have deteriorated a little bit further, and therefore moving, and then the thought of constructing something new in terms of a space or modifying a space or whatever to be a nice recording room again, makes me feel like, oh, we should just get to it then. And that was my question this morning, is like, how attached are you to things? Like, how attached am I to the fact that I put, we put 4 years into this house in terms of updating it, But I put 2 years into making the studio come to be a reality, and I've only been in it 3 years. So this idea of suddenly leaving it behind was kind of shocking to my brain. So I'm kind of processing that and looking at how badly do I want to make that change in the future, and how quickly do I want it to happen. So anyway, still no questions about mixing. I think that was sort of my general idea. Is there another way to teach new people about mixing where you aren't talking so much about how does an effect work? You're talking about how do you listen to music, and what do you listen to? What do you listen for? I mean, when you really got into an album and you really got to know it well, what were the things about it that made it sound great to you? And if you can translate that into, dynamics, frequency ranges, energy, um, arrangements, how the song is put together versus how the mix is done, and come up with those very descriptive and flavored words that like, oh, it was so smooth and cool. And it's like, well, sound isn't cool or smooth. Sound, I mean, smooth, sort of. You could have a smooth frequency range, and you could have a jagged one, but we use terms like cold or hot, or biting, or I'm trying to think, like fat sounds. And it's like, well, what does a sound like when it's fat? You just think, well, does that just mean bass? What about a fat mid-rangey sound? Sure, you could have heavily chorused and layered guitar. That's a fat mid-rangey sound. So just sort of thinking about the terms you use and the way you ask the questions about the mix might then lead you to say, well, how will I do that? Like, as you're a student and you're asking, anybody who's learning to mix either goes on YouTube and looks for stuff, or they talk to people who also mix and are into this stuff, and they ask them questions and they try and get the answers to what's the right thing to do. And while there are some guidelines on how to not do a bad job of mixing, like doing technical things that do damage to the sound, otherwise everything after that is a creative decision, right? Anybody who's like listening to a song that starts like it sounds like it's on an old classic radio and then gets big later, I mean, that's a mixing decision, right? It's not it sounds better if it's a small classic radio. It's, oh, what if we made it sound like it was on a radio, and then as the verse explodes or as the chorus explodes, it goes off the radio, or whatever shift you do in the mix. um, those are creative decisions. And then once you're doing that creative decision to try and make your song better, you ask the question, well, what tools do I use to make that happen? How do I make something sound like an old-timey radio sound? Well, take the original sound that's probably very clear sounding, get rid of high frequencies and low frequencies, because the frequency bandwidth on old transistor radios and old tube radios was much smaller than what we have today. And then add some distortion or some static in some way, and that could be done a bunch of different ways, because nowadays you could just stick a loop on that sounds like static and have that in the background, and that could add to it. Or you could put the voice through some sort of distortion circuit that maybe adds underlying noise that also sounds like static, so it sort of sounds more naturally generated from the voice, or a combo of the two. And then weird things like, anything else beyond that, well, does a radio speed up and slow down? Well, not normally, because radio waves come at the same speed. But it could sound cool to pitch bend a voice up and down at just mildly, to make it sound older, almost like it was on a tape, right? Like the tape is stretched or something like that. So those types of technical answers about what tools you use and how you use the tools to make the mix better would come after you said, well, what does the song actually need? So really, it's kind of the core of it is, what does the song need? And then when you start thinking about what does the song need, you look at different areas. And I didn't write anything down here for a list of areas. I was just thinking off the top of my head. The ones I said were dynamics, like how punchy or or how monotonously level is the volume of the song or the parts, and should they be shifted, or do you want that? Because it can sound really cool to have several instruments in a verse, for example, that are all kind of at a similar volume, say bass guitar, um, organ, or something like that, and they're doing their parts, but they're kind of mixed at a level where the dynamics are kind of flat, but maybe the drums are super punchy, right? Maybe that's what sounded good in the song. And then as you go to the chorus, just even if it's just the same instruments, just take them away from that flat level dynamic, either through changing the playing so that the guitar is strumming hard and then quiet and hard and quiet, get the dynamics in there, or through automation, or just changing the parts up so that the strum guitar comes in loud and the bass comes in quiet at that part, and then for the next riff the bass just gets boosted or whatever, and that could be a mixed decision even though that didn't happen live, sort of thing. Brett, I use multi-band treatments a lot, compression, limit, effects, etc. Yeah, I would think that. So, and that's the thing. Like let's see if I can sort of list what I typically use in mixing. I typically go to drums and throw dynamics on them, and I typically throw a drum bus on, and sometimes I throw a bus on the toms as well. So what I mean by a drum bus is I sum them and I throw some sort of compression or effect on. The one I've been trying not to have a lot of plugins, because, man, I'm already scattered between playing synth, learning synth, MIDI, audio, playing bass, fiddling on guitar. Now I'm learning to drum for my Parkinson's. So I scatter my learning in so many different places that I decided with plugins, I started sort of feeling like I was getting the overwhelm of plugins. And when I switched back to Windows and switched off of Universal Audio over to PreSonus Mixer, and I sold all my Universal Audio plugins with the interface. I suddenly had just the core ones that came with Studio One, which is plenty. And they sound, I'm not going to say they're the best in the industry or whatever, but they sound totally fine, right? They might be as good as anything else in the industry. It might just be a preference thing. So I limited myself to those, and I specifically tried to limit my compressors to the ones in the fat channel interface, which is also part of the mixer, just because I felt like it would be kind of cool to really know the compressors and EQs that are built directly into the mixer. Not because I was trying to do live sound, but I thought that maybe I'd start using the software compression more. But I didn't, because normally I don't compress a ton when I track, and I've bought an outboard gear with compression. So I have the SSL 6CH 500 series, and they have just a simple auto compressor in them, a reasonably fast attack, automatic release, that you just turn up a threshold knob and it's on. And then I've got two of the Rupert Neves Newton channel, and those things are just like, I spent ridiculous amounts of money on that gear. It sounds amazing, but you could buy lesser things and they still sound amazing. It was more just, it was really cool. And if I got a stereo pair, so I got those. So, and then I have a Warm Audio WA1B. So I've got a little bit of, for tracking, I tend to just use analog compression. But when mixing, I was using the fat channels, and primarily the 1176. For our album, I use the I think they call it the Alpine desk, or the Alpine compressor, on vocals, and then the Brit compressor, which is sort of the Neve style compressor, I started using as a drum bus. But eventually, when I got rid of some more analog gear, I decided to expand my plugin collection a little bit, and I bought the what's it called? It's the bundle with Equivocate, Decimate, and Elevate. Newfangled Audio's Elevate. It's a dynamic, compressor with an overdrive built in and a transient shaper that just sounds really cool. Presets are pretty decent. Like you can get really close to something like, oh, I want a heavy drum bus, and throw the preset on, and it's really close, and then you just drag the sliders around for the drive and the transient attack and the compressor amount of drive a little bit. And it became my go-to mix bus. But on our album, yeah, I typically use vocals. I'd use that Alpine compressor, if that's the name of it. I should find it. I'll bring up my Studio One. One of the reasons I took a while to get the stream going is I was trying to make sure OBS was connected so I could use my use OBS to share my screen. So let me just move myself to the top screen. I'll bring up one of our songs and Ignite. So this is the last song from our debut album, Processing by Waveform Mountain. That's our band. That's my daughter, myself. My son Seb joined on this song. He's doing backing vocal. No, he gets a verse to himself on this one, actually. And is playing guitar and bass on this one, or it might be me on bass. So when you look at my vocal chain here, let's see, got that up. So if I go to Studio One and Mixer, hopefully that worked. I'm going to wait till the live stream catches up to make sure I've actually shared. Yes, there it is shared. So with Studio One on the vocals, let's go verse 1, Fat Channel here. What I did almost, it's the Everest. It's not Alpine. It was similar, Everest, Mount Everest, or I can't remember which limiter this is supposed to be emulating, but one of the many famous limiters out there. But yeah, I for all the vocals on the album, I stuck with this compressor on fast attack, fast release, with a bit of catching the vocals, followed by a second compressor on the slow attack, slow release, and driving the vocals a bit harder into so that the fast attack was just catching the beginnings of the words, and the slower attack was doing the main compression. And in a couple of cases, I have, like in this case, on the whole vocal bus, there is the tube compressor, sort of, because there's a lot of harmonies, and well, not a lot of harmonies as in those people who do like super layered harmonies, but just for us, we weren't doing multi layers of harmonies, and this was six person harmony in this song. So let me make sure my mixer is set up so you can hear my stream from Studio One. And go to the beginning. Now I can't hear it in the room. Have I got it too quiet? I'm not hearing. Oh, hang on. Because I changed my mixer around, I have not updated this particular session with the latest I/O settings. So let me just say reset to default. Apply. Okay, so those are default, and then I will go to the mains here and make sure they're on 63, 64, no, 61, 62. That's right. There we go, now I'm hearing it. Is anything muted? Maybe. Okay, that looks like it's going into the stream. So this is the 12th song we did on our album. This is called Ignite. So Brett, the idea of moving back was maybe a faraway, long-term might be concept. We thought we'd stick around here for quite a while. I wish I had any idea how this sounded on the other end of the YouTube stream. Now this is unmastered. So because it is unmastered, I'm really hearing how unmastered it is because this is the mix that was sent to the mastering engineer. So let me throw on this newfangled Elevate I was talking about. I didn't want to do it while it was playing because it would be jarring. Now this is going to come in with the default compressor, so it's already going to boost the signal. I don't know how it'll sound on the stream. They wonder at destruction. They struggle to decide. I'll probably go with the clarity one. This is pretty good. Control this fire, a raging weapon at their side. Not too much drum, yeah. Golden blaze ignite. Until some passing moment when she finally is still, breathes in a sudden knowing she can access it at will. Golden blaze ignite. So that was my son Seb's idea to take the repeating chorus and shift it into a hum. And when the two of them went to sing it, because you have to hum, we found it's actually way harder to hum well in a mic than it is to sing well in a mic if you don't normally hum all the time. So I thought that was such a cool effect to end with. But yeah, that that was so if we go back to this idea of what type of questions would you ask, when I think back to this song, mixing, for example, mixing the 6-part harmony in the chorus there, and that's 6 parts of just the Golden Blaze Ignite in the background. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, we think our album was great. I'll put the link in the chat here. the 6-part harmony, there was a sense of like wanting to put the big verb on it. And what I used was I had my 500 series. I had the Mercury 7 reverb as the 500 series stereo pair, and you hear it right at the end as the hums come off. But that's the reverb that's used throughout the choruses. And the thought was to really layer and fatten up the vocals to sound very airy and mixed together. But we decided as we were listening to it that we like the idea of really being able to hear the distinct, because I think there's mostly 4-part harmony, but the six parts. So Seb is doing 3 of the parts, and Anders is doing 3 of the parts, and we decided not to add more layers to make it sound like multiple versions of each part, because we thought it was neat to be able to really on secondary listen hear Seb's part come through a little bit more one time, and it's like, oh no, you can hear Anders there. Oh, Anders' second part coming through, because they are doing different harmony or different melodies on each of those harmony lines. And so that's really was a question of like a mixing question, how much reverb to add. I think I would have added more reverb had we not wanted that clarity for the vocal. I mean, who knows what I would have done if we were trying to do things differently, but I think about some of the decisions. Like one of the things that I was learning as we were mixing this album is that Anders has a very nasal forward voice, which sounds great. They were a stage performer in musical theater, so they have that commanding like strength of voice for projecting to a crowd from a theater stage. And it's a different thing to sing into a microphone, and there's a lot of mid forwardness, and had a pretty good mic. But we did re-record everything when I got my bees knees Oliver. It was the perfect mic for their voice. Whoops. And so I was learning about how to EQ that in a way that still sounded like them, but didn't but lost the harshness, because I felt like the harshness was part of the presence that was there. And I'm finally getting that link I promised you for our album here. Is just going to another tab and talking at the same time, because I'm very capable of rambling on. So that's a link to our debut album on like 6 of the different streamings. You're probably on one of them, and they're on YouTube as well. But yeah, I mean, as I was mixing, I tended to stick with the same effects throughout. So when you look at the Pro EQ is used throughout, because that's the default EQ in Studio One. It's a nice 5-band or whatever it is, 6-band, I guess, if you count the shelves, or the band pass, the cuts. And sometimes, like, I rarely use the regular stock built-in compressor, but a couple times I threw it on and went, oh, I'm in this compressor, I guess that's fine, I'll just adjust with that. But most of the time, if you look, it'll be fat channel for here's the Brit compressor on. This is a modular synth sound. The drums, again, this is before I got the Elevate, so I wasn't using it as a drum bus. I would typically use the Brit compressor as the drum bus. And now I go to do that, and then I remember I have the newfangled audio, and I tend to pull up its drum bus and then make it more subtle if I don't want to overshape the transients of the drums. And then beat delay, in some cases directly. That was just it, because we're such a synth band, right? A lot of virtual analog, virtual synths, and a lot of physical synths mixed together. And a lot of the times I'd use beat delay, or the other thing I'd use a lot on the synths, I don't know if I've got one here that was using that, maybe Chromophone. No, a lot of them would have the built-in arpeggiator in Studio One. So when you have a synth track. Let's see if I go over here. No, there's none there. Okay. If you go to instruments, when you're dealing with software instruments, there are note effects here. And so there's an arpeggiator that if you just drag it onto your synth track or whatever MIDI track you have, why is it not jumping on there? It creates an arpeggiator effect, even if that MIDI based or virtual instrument doesn't have a built-in arpeggiator. And so I was using that quite a bit. For some reason, my brain is failing to figure out how to add that onto. Oh, these tracks are probably frozen. That's why most of these songs got bounced down. So they've gone from synth tracks to analog tracks. Okay, I'm gonna go back to just the switcher, because while that's up, and every time I go back to the YouTube interface to see if anybody's chatting, it puts up the YouTube interface instead. Anyways, that was my topic for today. If anyone had any thoughts, questions, that was sort of my idea. Like I said, I haven't really done a lot of live streams. I did one on the Studio Live just because, I think it was the second or third video I did on my channel is the Studio Live, Persona Studio Live mixer, does it rival Universal Audio's Apollo? Because I just moved from Apollo to Studio Live, and I thought that would be a good clickbaity, provocative title. And I guess that's a fact, because that video has just recently, because of its steady day-by-day views, like never doesn't have views every single day, about the same number of views, has just passed like 25 or 26,000 views, which made it my highest viewed video on my channel. So I did do a live stream on the Studio Live where I was just sort of talking about it, and there were a few people asking questions, but I don't do a lot of like just jump on and live stream. But I think one of the ideas was, if I'm in a smaller space, and I'm not doing something where I'm going to be featuring, say, bands in my space like I did on my Musicians of Vancouver Island series, then maybe live streaming something will be something I do more of. And I don't know how serious I am about building my channel. I mean, anyone who, I don't know if you guys are on here, if you just randomly found me, or if you watch my channel regularly, but or have watched it a bit. But my intent was to build a studio and run it as a business in my retirement, and then my diagnosis with Parkinson's changed my relationship with thinking about how I want to spend my time. And it's not that I don't agree with or want to put any effort into running it as a business. It was more that I didn't have to do the business to survive. So how do I want to spend my time just doing things I would like to do and creating, interesting musical content and fucking around with gear and, playing with synths and buying and selling synths and basses and things, as people who are obsessed with gear often do. And so, yeah, it was something I hadn't really decided that I was going to do YouTube really seriously until it suddenly started heading towards monetization. Then it started becoming kind of fun to make videos, and that's why I was going to make the one about the synth bass here. If you joined later, I was talking about this earlier. So I got the G77. I bought this 2 years ago. I found the synth module for it about a year later, but then there was a problem between the two where there was a hiss, and my technician couldn't figure it out, and it took me a while to get that sorted. And now it's sorted, and I haven't gotten around to making a video because I was wrapping up other things. So hopefully I'll still do that. It's literally, this is one of my things I'm thinking about. Is this a keep it if I go to a smaller space or not? I've got 3 basses with 1 on the way. I'm thinking I could go down to 2, but that would mean getting rid of this. So I'll probably have to go down to 3, because I don't think I want to get rid of this. This is a really nice jazz bass. Okay. Well, thanks for joining on my stream. Oh, thanks, Brett. I'm glad it was a nice stream. I feel like it was just sort of, I figured if I just come on here and ramble and just be a genuine guy just hanging out on the internet. I mean, one of the reasons for moving back to Victoria is to hang out with people more, because I still have a lot of friends there and I have fewer friends here, and families there. Um, so that idea of hanging out sort of spilled over into the idea of live streaming too, sort of hanging out with people, and hoping there was at least enough people to ask a question. Oh, Prashant was saying, what camera am I using? I've got the other one's in the other room. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 4Ks. So that's their older Pocket Cinema cameras. I think they make 8Ks now. Maybe not, but they're if they're current, they're on their way out. I remember they were being replaced, but they're slightly older. Not the first version of the Pocket Cinema camera from Blackmagic, but the 4K, which was the second one. And I bought one new and really liked how it's really it's a dedicated, like, it's not 35 millimeter. I don't believe they call that 35 millimeter, but it's like a 35 millimeter style of camera, and it's designed for video, right? It's not designed to be a camera that also does video. It's designed to be a video camera that can also do stills. So it's the other way. And it's designed to work with the ATEM switcher, which is the switcher I bought for live streaming, and for recording multi-streams when I was recording bands. And the nice thing is, although it's not so nice, the nice thing is it's got integrated software control of the camera. So through the HDMI, I can cause it to autofocus. So I can be here and hit the autofocus on the software to focus on me. It's not good because every time that software loads, it completely changes the settings on the camera to something that's usually really dark, and I have to go back and adjust the aperture and the f-stop, or yeah, that is f-stop, and the speed, shutter speed of the camera, and the lighting setup every single time I open that thing. But it is cool once I open it. If I change it, then it stays good until I close the software again and open it again. So as long as I leave the software open, I can have some control over brightness and stuff. But yeah, I've spent a bit of time trying to get this lighting right. So what I've got going on right now is the front window is, the curtains are open, and there's my kitty sitting up there. It's a cloudy day, so I've got a cloudy light coming in, but I still have a ring light right beside me. There's no, oh no, the backlights are on a little bit. Usually I turn them right off and then just have the glowy LEDs. And then I often do a side light on this side, but again, I'm getting light from the back windows because I have windows on either side of the studio, so I get natural light in the control room coming through the sliders. So okay, yeah, I'll do another live stream. I'm starting to become an online personality, so so yeah, I'll keep doing these. And shout out to ditcommunity.com, where I do weekly live streams starting up again on Monday at 1 p.m. It's free to join DIT community. It's a global community of musicians. And you don't have to be a musician, just people in the music industry, but you find musicians on there. So if you're looking to connect with musicians, that's handy too. Okay, we'll talk to you later. I'm going to hit this end stream button. See you.